taken this COVID-19 as an opportunity to reimagine a future for Pakistan and generally across the world, but specifically Pakistan, where the neoliberal form of capitalism, which is predicated on austerity and trickle down economics, just incentivize businesses and they will create employment and economy will keep on growing. Now, this was not working prior to COVID-19 in Pakistan. And now it is, I think, time to think about fiscal spending as a way out of this crisis and also redistribution, because majority of the working class in Pakistan has been left out and their living standards have not improved. So this crisis may be an opportunity to create a new discourse around fiscal spending and redistribution, because the argument that government does not have the resources, it's that argument has been flipped now, right? Because now all of a sudden government has money to throw out, right? And the United States is a classical example, although that's a unique economy, but they have pumped more than $5 trillion in past few months, right? And the inflationary pressure hasn't been much. And Pakistan, given its limited resources, also following the same path of fiscal spending. So this, again, on a positive note, I would like to end here and want your thoughts that is it possible now to create a new source or new kind of politics and economic imagination in Pakistan, which is centered on this inclusive development where all segments of society are catered rather than just very elite-centric economic policies?
I personally don't think that's going to happen. I think that every time if we get some degree of, let's say, additional loans internationally or a deferment in what we have to give, that breathing space will create enough power for the state to try and mitigate what's happening. And once we come out of it, we'll find ourselves largely to be in the same boat as we were before, because the politics, if the worst of this is avoided, if a vaccine is developed or we are able to control this before it goes absolutely out of control. And I know I'm a minority on this, but even worldwide, I tend to feel, because we've seen this historically as well. In World War I, it was the World War to end all world wars. And in 20 years, they did a world war, which was so much more severe than what had come before. We've seen examples where mankind comes together and thinks that we need to rethink this. But unless there's a fundamental shift in politics or power that happens during this period, I do think some of the things that are being innovated, government is now using more online tools. The fact that SAS is expanding in this way, this will be an expansion of capacity, of ability, of will, and even competence. But if the worst does not come to bear, I personally feel that the reimagining may not be as strong as we anticipate.
Yes, I think just coming on this issue globally, there were already changes underfoot, I think, as far as let's just take on globalization. There's already before COVID-19, there have been these movements now coming out in the first world against globalization, its negative impact on climate change. All those things were already being framed. And I think going forward globally, we will see more push, and especially where governments are more, democracies and electoral systems are far more advanced in countries elsewhere, especially in the first world than in Pakistan. So the governments are truly more susceptible to public opinion, what we were talking about earlier. The vested interests do exist as the international capital, and there is a pushback against that globally, I think, and that is going to continue. I don't think there's going to coalesce into a fast change there, but I think those discussions about what is fair, the oil price of oil, fossil fuels, change to that, about traveling, international travel, how that has changed life. It is going to slowly push forward certain movements which were already underfoot. Pakistan, I think Pakistan economy, Pakistan's structures of Pakistan's economy, I think we've already been, we are always reactive. We do not have mechanisms within institutions within Pakistan which can get together and make long-term strategic plans. We don't have strategic plans. Pakistan does not come out with strategic plans every 5 years, which Mahbubul Haq started maybe in the 60s and 70s, which we haven't really, uh, we haven't really kept that strategy forward. And also we question who is at the helm of making these strategic plans. Who is going to make? Do we have elected governments who make strategic plans? But with the elected governments also, it's again, and we are in that experimental stage where we don't know how and who wields power and who exactly will that system continue. There are constant questions about elected governments. Government gir rahi hai, nahi gir rahi, and it's going to be changed. They're centers of power which are outside political parties, outside elected governments. So that has led to more of a reactive. Pakistan is always reactive. We constantly are reacting to our economic strategies, or even to global changes. We are constantly reacting. I don't think even now the government will be thinking about how to react to the downturn that's happened. It's a reactive policy. We will try to get our loans waived off. We have been successful in getting some of the loans waived off. We are going to do the old things that we do, run to our friends who have more money, with the begging bowl that we've always had. We've never really broken the begging bowl. We are not going to break the begging bowl. So it is relying on to the old tested things. The brunt of it is going to be faced by the Pakistani public. It's not just the government's fault. It is something that we found ourselves, and blaming PTI government or this one political government is just really, that's really not the right way of thinking about it. These are structural issues in Pakistan which have continued for a long time. So I think we are still going to be reactive. There is not going to be any distributive mechanisms coming into play, because again, if you talk about elected governments, who's sitting in the assemblies, these are the people who actually are the haves of this country, who hold power, who hold economic power. And I don't think they're going to be we are in danger of any one of them voting themselves out of that economic power, or distributing that power, or wealth to more distributive policies. I think there is going to be more reliance on social welfare safety nets. I think, as Fasis also talked about, SARS, and maybe building on that, certain safety nets, which is also a good thing. It's not a bad thing. We need to increase, this is the bare minimum that the government can do, is to increase the social safety nets that we have for the marginalized communities. But as far as the whole, reconfiguring our economic systems and redistributive systems, I don't think we are in any danger of that in Pakistan for the next 4 or 5 years, I think, or even longer.
I'd say that I think at the individual level, I think we would perhaps see some shifts in Pakistan as well as across the world. I think one of the casualties of this could potentially be a very interconnected world that created and fueled the current crisis to some extent. To me, what's fascinating is how the social media and the micro targeting of the media messaging in this particular whole sort of episode of Corona, the world has really come out as one global village in which I mean, when the issue started in China and eventually started to spread, everyone started feeling the pain of it and the threat of it as if it was just the next door village. And it did turn out to be like that from China, it quickly spread to hundreds of countries in just a matter of weeks. So I think the interconnected world and how it's being interconnected through international travel and through media, through international trade. I think these may see some long-term shifts, and it is also quite apparent that there may be further fast-paced shift from the west to the east, in the sense of the European and the American economies, and the European and American health systems not responding that well to the crisis, and being exposed to such tremors and letting people die in large numbers. In terms of Pakistan, I mean I'm generally optimistic about things. I think the various models of dealing with Corona. I think one of the negatives of that was the confusion they created. But it also pointed to how after the 18th Amendment, there is, in spite of every opposition to it, and in spite of the structure that exists, that doesn't really let the constitutional governance to happen. In spite of every structural and opposition existing to that, I think we did see the provincial governments exercising their rights to govern. It would certainly have been much better if despite having that freedom, they had exercised that freedom in a more consensus manner. And if there was a parliament that did convene itself to exercise its rights. But it does point out to me that eventually I think we are heading in a manner in which we may be able to find better ways of governing. And from the provincial governments exercising their rights, eventually the local governments will eventually be able to deliver what people are really asking for here.
Right. So thank you, everyone. I mean, it has been really helpful to understand what's going on in Pakistan, both in terms of the communication strategy, how people are visualizing and conceptualizing the religious sentiments on one hand and health concern on the other, and the impact of the COVID-19 on economy. And I'd like to thank all of you for being here and sharing your thoughts. And hopefully we'll continue this discussion with a new survey that Gallup will release sometime in the future. So once again, thank you.